Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second story time. I listened to all of your feedback, and it was pretty much all positive. You guys wanted to hear more of these, which is cool. I think it's just something unique that I do, where we kind of catch up on the story of our tabletop Star Wars RPG, and the events that have happened before we get the series rolling later this fall. Now, if you haven't watched the first one, you probably should do that. It will give you vital information in the continuation of this story here. But it's okay if you just jump in on this one as well. I'll talk more afterwards about kind of what's happening and what's going on with the game as well, because this was a previous session. We've already played once more since this, and more things have happened, and I want to catch you up on that stuff later as well, but in a different video. I'll talk more later afterwards, but without further ado, here is the continuation of our story. Dinner was being served. First was an appetizer of seared skewerfish scallops. Then the entree, a fillet of fecklin with a Mantillion sprout side salad. After that, some servants returned dirty plates to the kitchen, while others prepared small round high-top tables around the ballroom. The servants brought out dessert, a chocolate souffle with Corellian vanilla ice cream, and placed it on these tables. This would likely be the last chance for the Void Ghosts to socialize and overhear gossip before the end of the dinner party, so they dove right in. But not before Al-Asktar decided he wanted to take a deeper look around this establishment. He figured that if Demetrius was hiding something, then it was likely in a basement or secret room, and after taking a peek around using a bathroom break as an excuse, he did in fact find what he was looking for, a set of stairs that led both upstairs and downstairs. Alask convinced another member of the party, Doc, to go with him. After all, the last time Alask went exploring on his own, he almost got himself killed by a rival group of bounty hunters, an even more complex situation than the one he found himself in now. Either way, he learned it was best to take backup. He and Doc snuck their way down into the dark and what seemed to be out-of-place basement. Up above on the ground floor, everything was so clean, so elegant. Down here, there was a musky smell, like something had been living down here for quite some time. This worried both of them. They were careful not to mess with anything, so that there would be no sign of them being down here. Although, it was tempting to open the portcullis they found embedded into the wall near the basement landing, though their curiosity would be sated for the time being as they found a barred door further down the dark and humid hallway. They looked through the bars into the dark room on the other side, and saw 4 men sleeping on ratty beds. A human, 2 Twi'leks, and a Wookiee. Each of them had a slave collar on. Clearly, the rumors of Demetrius keeping slaves for his entertainment was mostly correct, although there was no way for them to rescue the slaves at the moment. They would have to come back when the party died down a bit. So they left, and on their way back upstairs, they couldn't just leave well enough alone. They had to open the portcullis to see what was down that little cave. After all, there could be more slaves that they needed to know about. Only there wasn't. They found it very odd that this passage was carved into the stone underneath this palace. The passage twisted and turned until they reached a small opening with a much larger portcullis, blocking their way into an even larger cavern. It was far too dark to tell what was on the other side, though. They looked around at their feet. There was a bucket with a large chunk of raw meat, and a chair resting against the wall nearby. Then they heard it. The sound of something sleeping? A heavy breathing in and out. From what they could tell, it was some kind of massive creature. Then suddenly, it stopped. Both Alask and Doc looked at each other with an expression that said, "Nope." Both men ran back down the passageway, closing the small portcullis behind them. Upstairs, the rest of the group socialized, trying to subtly gain any information that they could on the murders happening in the city, and it wasn't long until an uninvited guest subtly made his way into the ballroom and glanced around, clearly looking for somebody. The man was well dressed and had slightly graying hair. He stood up straight and nodded to a man the Void Ghosts didn't trust. A man named Alexei, who was supposedly investigating the murders as well. The party tried to offer their assistance, but being the slimy man he was, he turned them down in a manner that suggested the party was below him, that he would somehow do a much better job with just he and his men. Alexei discreetly made his way to the well-dressed older man. Venator, the droid, decided he could probably get close enough to overhear the conversation without drawing too much attention to himself. It was time to act. "General Oswin, did you find him?" Alexei said. Venator's interest was piqued immediately. Oswin was the surname of the current leader of the Shadow Collective, someone they have met and trusted to some regard. Was this general related? "No, Alexei. He appears to be off planet still," the general responded. "That's unfortunate. Might I suggest we use our current tactic on him to bring him straight to you?" "No, we have not reached that level of desperation yet. Anyways, I wanted to inform you that he will be arriving tomorrow. Do make sure that you leave this party early tonight, would you?" "Yes, General." The old man walked out briskly. Nobody else seemed to notice. It was around this time that Alask and Doc returned, trying to warn the rest of the party that Demetrius had some sort of creature locked up downstairs, and, more importantly, that he had 4 slaves as well. Something that was appalling to the entire party. Vex, the party's huntmaster, seemed concerned. Caitlin, her friend and secretary, was visibly upset as well. She excused herself to the bathroom and didn't respond to any inquiries of concern from the party. It was then that the servants cleaned up the leftover desserts, and then quickly placed a barrier around the circular tiled ballroom dance floor. "The main event is about to begin, everyone," Demetrius excitedly exclaimed soon after. Almost everyone rushed over to the outside of the barrier. As the floor began to shake and rumble, the sound of grinding stone filled the room, as the very elegant dance floor sunk into the ground several inches below, and then slowly started spreading apart, creating a giant circular hole in the ground. The party tried to prepare for the inevitable. They may have to get into a fight here. They may have to free the slaves. They didn't know what to do, and everything was happening so fast. What was revealed was a large drop into a pit filled with sand, surrounded by smooth walls. On the far end was a large gate that slowly began to open as the 4 slaves from earlier were ushered into the pit from a smaller opening on the other side. Each slave carried a primitive weapon and looked terrified. The small door quickly closed behind them as a large creature began to emerge from the gate that was about to finish opening. It ferociously looked up at the crowd watching and used one of its long arms to shield its eyes from the sudden burst of light. The party recognized this creature immediately. Demetrius didn't just keep slaves for his entertainment, but a medium-sized rancor. He was using slaves as faux gladiators in these pit battles, and clearly, they would never win either, as the humanoid bones sticking out of the sand would suggest. A cheer erupted from the ballroom as horror struck the party. First, the human slave tentatively ran in, meeting his doom swiftly. Then the 2 Twi'leks. They didn't last any longer either, as one of them got picked up and thrown against the pit wall with a loud bone-snapping crack. The party were ready to act. They might just be able to save the Wookiee from certain death when suddenly a flash of white out of the corner of their eyes. Caitlin, still in her fancy dinner gown, dove into the pit, doing an acrobatic roll to break her fall while simultaneously picking up one of the swords dropped by the fallen slaves. She dodged a few swipes from the rancor. Before expertly landing on his arm during its final swipe, she ran up its arm like a ballerina, reaching the top of its head and stabbing the sword down through the top of its skull. The rancor's lip fell on one side, and one of its hands touched its face as the left eye dropped down uncontrollably before its whole body fell forward, first onto its knees. then flat on its face. Caitlin released her grip on the sword and jumped forward as it fell over, a perfect 3-point landing in front of the fallen creature, looking up with disgust to the Hutt Demetrius. A moment of complete and utter shock hit the crowd. Then suddenly, an explosive applause and cheering. The party, in disbelief at the unknown talents of Caitlin, helped her out of the pit along with the Wookiee. The Wookiee introduced himself as Sha Wenyan, then thanked the party, and especially Caitlin, for saving him. Cookie, the party's Wookiee, introduced himself. Cookie, Sha said. I've heard that name somewhere before. A moment of silence from the group as he sat there thinking for a moment. Cookie, I believe that I know your father. So there you have it. They finished up the dinner party. It was really interesting. It was I was expecting them to, and this is just like a normal GM thing, I was expecting them to be able to finish it in one night, but they didn't. It took 2 full nights to do the dinner party and everything, and it was pretty cool. I enjoyed that encounter. I wouldn't call it really an encounter. It was more just like a story-driven thing. A lot. There's been a lot of intrigue going on behind the scenes in the game, and this was a chance for them to kind of dig into that and learn about it a bit more through the course of all this. And they've kind of put some pieces together. You know, like, is Demetrius involved in what's going on with these murders? They don't know, but these murders are definitely happening, and there's this mysterious general who walked in. Who's that? Is he related to the leader of the Shadow Collective, who at the moment is currently off planet and has been anytime the party tries to contact him? He's been over in the Hutt space, basically trying to do things with it, because the Hutts are part of the Shadow Collective as well, so he's trying to do work on that end and everything, and he just hasn't been around. So, like, what's going on with that? And like, who's this person showing up the very next day? And there's just like so many things happening that could or could not be connected, and they just don't know. They have their suspicions, but they don't know for sure. And it's really interesting because in the game that we just ended up playing, where we continued our story, they got a bit more information, and they found out kind of more of what's going on, and they also picked up another part of the bounty for the Great Hunt, and they have to go do that. So it's like, while they could do all this investigation, they need to do the Great Hunt stuff, and it's kind of a cool contrast that I've created, where the Great Hunt is keeping them from just digging straight into the intrigue. And what it does is it actually creates a little bit more mystery, because they have to slowly work through the Great Hunt while also doing the mystery stuff. And the mystery stuff doesn't just stop while they're on the Great, it's continuing to happen. So they'll show back up at Order Mantell after the hunt, or after the bounty that they collect, and it will be progress forward. More things will have happened. So it's a little fun thing that we have created, and I've really enjoyed it. If you couldn't tell, I run a very narratively driven game. I do enjoy combat a lot, though, because I'm that kind of player, so I do like to throw that in. In fact, in the next story time, I'll talk about some things that were given to the party in that session, including new items to make them prepared for battle, more or less, and prepared for what's gonna come up. But yeah, like I said, either way, I'm really enjoying the narrative-driven stuff, and I think you guys already know that because of all the other Star Wars stuff I do. I do narratively driven stuff when it is involving a subject matter that I really enjoy, such as Star Wars. And I know enough about Star Wars and the universe of Star Wars and everything about it, and like the expanded universe, canonical expanded universe now, that I'm able to create some really cool moments in the story. And it's really fun too, because I could connect it to the movies, because that's what we're connected to. We're in the Force Awakens timeline, and I'm excited to see, because right now we're about 4 years out from the start of The Force Awakens, and by the time Episode 8 comes out, we will have just finished the end of Episode 7, events. So it's fun to kind of build up to the start of episode 7 and how are the party involved in that and everything, and are they directly involved at all? You know, they may decide to go a different direction and not be involved with the events of the First Order or anything. So it's interesting and it's fun. Either way, I want to know kind of your thoughts. Like, what do you think is going on in the story at the moment? I should probably explain that I had set Caitlin up much earlier, like months ago when they first got to Ord Mantell and started the Great Hunt. Like, it was our like 4th session in, they started the Great Hunt or something. So it's been a long time since they've started this and doing all that, you know, stuff. And they've known Caitlin for a while, and Vex has always been kind of the badass of the two of them. And Caitlin's always been, you know, the calmer. She's very proper, and she's always, you know, handling the business behind the scenes and everything. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she jumps around and just like destroys this Rancor, which if the party went up against, they likely would have died because they're not at that power level yet. So, you know, like, what's going on with her? Why is she so powerful all of a sudden? Where did she get that? Like, that came out of nowhere. And I purposely created that character with that thought process like months ago, that she was going to finally reveal her skills and her identity later on to the group, and it worked out really well. It was a cool moment. But who do you think she is, or what do you think she does? You know, obviously she's working as a bounty hunter now with the Great Hunt, but what's up with her? You know, who is she really? It's interesting. It's fun. But like, I want to know your thoughts on what's going on Ord Mantell. Like, what are with these murders? Who's this general? What's with these slaves and this now really interesting Wookiee that has showed up to talk to Cookie and apparently knows his father? What's going on there? Now, we've, again, have already played another session, so a lot of that has already been revealed in our game, but I'm curious to know what you think before I reveal it to you guys. So let me know in the comments below. I'll try to get that other story time up before the end of this upcoming weekend, just so you can kind of catch up to where we currently are and see like, oh, that's where he's going with the story. I think it'll be fun to see your reactions between this one and the next. With all that being said, though, I hope you enjoyed, and we shall see you guys next time.